Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of Tom's Hirschsprung's podcast. My guest today is a very special guest, and we share something very special in common that we will talk about later on. But my guest today is Amy Green. Welcome to the podcast, Amy.
Thanks so much, Tom. I'm so excited to be here and to support your mission of spreading our stories to help other people on this journey.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for coming along. Now we'll take a deep dive into your story, which is phenomenal. And we'll talk about that later on. But we'll start, as we usually do, from the very beginning. And I'd like, if you can, to take me back to 2008 or just slightly before 2008, and we'll go from there.
Definitely. So in 2008, I was a senior in high school. I was 18. I was kind of reckless and just, not really aware of the world or aware of my body. I didn't have a higher power. I was just kind of existing, and there wasn't much substance. I didn't have a lot of feelings, or if I did, I was probably numbing them with drugs and alcohol. And I had never heard of ulcerative colitis. And so the story goes is that when I was the morning after my senior prom, I woke up, went to the bathroom, and all I saw was blood in the toilet. And I was pretty much like, oh my gosh, like, hopefully this is going to go away. I don't want to tell my parents. But it definitely did not go away. And I had to get my parents involved because the blood didn't stop. And what's funny is that I don't remember ever seeing just like a couple drops of blood leading up to that. It was all just like, that's all you saw. There was no substance in the toilet. And so it just kind of came out of nowhere. And I feel like even if it had given me any clues along the way leading up to that moment, I wouldn't have known likely, because being that young, you're not really in tune with your body. You're not listening to it or noticing like, oh, this hurts, or we should look at this. And so that summer after I graduated, I was in and out of the hospital. I was diagnosed with the ulcerative colitis. And even just hearing the words ulcerative colitis was, there's kind of scary words when you first hear them for the very first time. And, we're kind of immune to them now in this community, but my family didn't know what it was. My community didn't know what it was. And in 2008, it was just a different world, right? Technology and communication, social media just wasn't how it is now. There weren't podcasts like this to talk about it. And it was scary to get the diagnosis. But that summer I was in and out of the hospital for dehydration and anemia. I was having terrible, terrible stomach pain and using the restroom, I don't know, 30 times a day or something, 50 times a day. And eventually that fall, to back up, they tried me on a bunch of drugs, like Asacol and some prednisone, but that didn't make it better. It only made my UC worse. And then that fall, I finally, went into the hospital for just another like dehydration issue, and I didn't come out of the hospital for 6 weeks at that time. And that chunk of time of being in the hospital was, really the life-changing part, because, when I left, then I came out of the hospital, I was 79 pounds, and I had an ostomy bag. I had a wound infection, the size of a softball. And I was just really riddled with trauma and fear and anxiety and pain. But for those 6 weeks in the hospital, I was on blood transfusions. I was on IV food through a PICC line. They tried me on the Remicade and just kept, throwing drugs at it and just trying to keep my little body alive. And I remember when it kind of, maybe at about, 4 weeks in, I got really sick. I was having just infections. I know C. diff was one of them. And I had a fever of about 104 degrees. And my surgeon came in and was like, we've got to go in and, take your colon out. They came in and they put the little dot on your stomach where the stoma you go. And I was just like along for the ride. And I didn't know if I could speak up. We didn't know about any, I was so sick. I mean, I almost died, Tom. And thankfully I don't have too many memories of how thin and feeble I was, but just the fact of knowing that I was 79 pounds when I got out after all of that on my 5'10" frame is a kind of sobering thought. But so they go in, they take the colon out, and they take the colon out, and then 24 hours later, after they've sewed me back up, I'm vomiting. I have the NG tube going on, and what's happening is I have a bowel obstruction. And I now know that bowel obstructions are really fairly common after you've had a total colectomy, and didn't know that at the time, of course. But so I had to go back in, open me back up, untangle my intestines, and close me back up. But because of the ostomy, the ostomy is brand new. Also, it's like on one side, and then you've got this incision on the other side. They were like, I don't know, half an inch apart. They were so close together. And somehow I would say the fecal matter from the stoma and the ostomy got into the wound, or the incision, which then caused the wound. And I don't know, it just started like growing, and it just became this whole thing. You have to have a whole different team of nurses when you have a giant infection on your stomach, that's 4 inches, 4 by 4 really. And I was extremely traumatized just by having to have my bandages changed. I wouldn't look at this thing, and I was so scared, and I had so much anxiety. And I remember that at least one particular memory, but I'm sure it happened plenty, where the nurses would come in to change my bandage, and I would just start freaking out, like kind of just crying and being emotional. And they would have to medicate me with some kind of anti-anxiety medicine that would just knock me out. And the next thing I knew, I'd wake up and, oh, my bandage is clean, and I have new bandages. And I don't know, that's just like, it's a sad part, I feel like, because it had to get to that point to get those bandages changed. So I get out of the hospital, I have the at-home nurses, and I pretty much just stay on like the second story of our home for quite some time. I can't go up and down the stairs. I have to relearn how to walk again. And, getting in and out of bed is an extreme challenge, and being so weak. And I still didn't look at my wound infection for a very long time until it was really, really small, I remember. And yeah, somehow miraculously I recovered from all of that. And I had the ostomy bag. I was 19 and ended up living with the ostomy bag for 2 years. And I was told that the ostomy bag was the first surgery and the first step. And then the second surgery and the second step would be the J-pouch creation. And then the third step would be the takedown of the ostomy bag. This took about roughly 2 years. And so I go back in to have the J-pouch made by my same surgeon. Kind of an uneventful surgery from what I recall. But after that, I was always kind of having issues. Still wasn't really quite healthy. I wasn't gaining weight. I still, I had a lot of output from the ostomy bag. And then once the ostomy bag was taken down after that, for that third surgery, it was doing a decent job, but I still had chronic diarrhea. I wasn't gaining weight. I had pain. It was just kind of like this mess that I was still in, and the J-pouch wasn't really helping. Sure, I wasn't having blood in my stool anymore, but something was wrong, and I didn't really know what was wrong until just a couple years ago. And yeah, what was wrong is that, just to fast forward to now a little bit, is that the J-pouch was made incorrectly, and it had been left with almost double the amount of length for the rectal cuff. And I just want to pause there for a second. Do you want to like share anything?
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating start. And I'm just doing the conversions when you talked about your story and you said you were 79 pounds. In my own head, I was thinking, well, what's that? And it's about 5.5 stone, which is like absolutely nothing. So you having to relearn to walk again and feeling very weak, very feeble would make absolute sense being 5.5 stone. What was that like having to relearn to walk again?
It's like you just have to go so slow, and it's sad. You're like sad for yourself, because you're like, what has just happened to me? I was just this like, young teenager running around, and all of a sudden now I'm like in a wheelchair and I need help with everything. And it really felt like your body was like against you, and that you don't have any control of your body. And it was very scary. And just you get so exhausted so easily being that thin. And like right now I'm 130 pounds and I love being this weight, but yes, 79 pounds is like you're just like bones mostly.
Yeah. There's not a lot to you for 79 pounds. And then when you had the J pouch, something, to be honest, I didn't know before why it was called a J pouch, because the intestines are made into the shape of a J, which makes absolute sense.
Yeah, just like it sounds.
Yeah. No, I hadn't really figured the two before.
Yeah, so they use your small intestine. They take the last couple inches of it, and they just create a little pouch in the shape of a J, and that acts as the reservoir as your large intestine. So it's really double duty. So it's doing the small intestine duty, and then it's also in this newly formed J pouch doing the large intestine duty.
So all of this happened sort of around 2008 or so, right. And then a little bit sort of later on. And you said it was made incorrectly. When did they then start to think, oh, something might be amiss here?
I think that's the funny part. I think that doctors didn't know what was wrong. And they also kind of pushed me to the side, and I would, call and complain, and they would just treat me with like antibiotics, or they couldn't find anything through all these scopes. And it was just kind of convoluted and mysterious for some time. And, it's kind of just like my health just kept coming back up. It's like, why am I so sick? Why do I feel so bad? And so I kept finding different doctors, right? Searching whose expertise can help me to heal and help me to understand this like better. But the thing is that, yeah, I mean, it's my path. It's supposed to be this way, but all the doctors I went to, the many different surgeries that I had along the way, they weren't helping anything. They were only making things worse. And, when that happens to somebody, you develop even more anxiety, and you develop even more fear through all this trauma. I mean, pain in itself is traumatic, right? When every little step or movement you take, I mean, every single, heel to toe hurts, then you're wondering like, why did I have this surgery? If I recovered now, why am I still having rectal pain? Why am I still having chronic diarrhea? And so I guess by the time I was 24, which was 10 years ago, so that would be 2014, something like that. I had 15 surgeries just in the 6 years since I was 18. And that's, rectally, abdominally, vaginally, like there was just a lot going on. And I finally just swore doctors off, actually. I was like, these guys don't know anything. It's not working out for us. And I just started treating at home. And so I got into like supplements, I got into herbs, and just trying to understand diet a little bit. And anytime I did go into a doctor appointment, I brought, this huge stack of medical papers with me, like thinking that's going to help me somehow. But I didn't know how to, I don't know how to go into these appointments. If anybody had said anything to me in these appointments that just like irritated me, they weren't nice or they just ticked me off, like I was just irate after it. And I wasn't very calm. I was a really difficult patient, yeah, I mean, I, I think I earned the badge to be a difficult patient after all of what I had been through. And, but yeah, I mean, there was a point where like I even bought pain pills off the street actually, because I was in so much pain and my doctors, wouldn't give it to me because for whatever reasons. And, yeah, I would just use sitz baths at home. And my point in doing all that was because I didn't want to be cut on again. And just the fact of being cut on is like, you have to recover from that. There's the emotional compound of it. And I just didn't want to go through that anymore. But I knew that kind of on the back burner, just of Amy's life, like, you got to deal with this. Like, you got to figure it out. And I would say that, it had to get worse right before it got better. And so in 2018, I finally was like, all right, I'm going to try another doctor, and found this guy in the Atlanta area. And he gave me about, 7 different options for surgery of what he thought he could do. And I was like, okay, let's, have the pouchoscopy, because that's the preliminary step. And after that pouchoscopy, I learned that they pretty much spread my anal sphincter way more than it should have been. And it left me incontinent for months. And I had to wear diapers. I can't even believe that I held a job down during that time. And, but it led me to being suicidal, because there's no way to keep living your life like this, and the amount of suffering, pain, fear, anxiety, and honestly just poop, right, that I was having to deal with. I always say that the triangle that I lived was, the bathroom and my bed, for just back and forth. And, yeah, then I would say in 2020, we had the pandemic, and I had been traveling for a really long time with my job. I mean, all over the country. It's amazing that I even did it with these health issues.
Yeah.
So finally, you have to stay home because of the pandemic. And I'm like, yes, I get to stay home. And the diet that I really wanted to try, called the specific carbohydrate diet, or the SCD diet. And I swear by this diet. I had such amazing results with it. It was really hard to do, but it was so worth the result. And it was pretty much it's an elimination diet. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's, you have to eat like chicken broth for a week, and then you cut out all carbs, all grains, so all potatoes and quinoa and rice, any like gluten-free goodies that are made out of rice, really. And for a couple of days, it felt like I had the flu, because my body was detoxing from all these grains. And it's revolutionary. There's a whole book on this diet. It's called Breaking the Vicious Cycle is the name of the book. And this diet is specifically for people with UC, for Crohn's. It even helps cure autism. And I think diverticulitis, probably a couple others. But after you get through the chicken broth phase, then you can add one item. So it's like, all right, let's add chicken or carrots. And you are journaling, and you are really just devoted to this diet, and, monitoring your symptoms is what you're doing. And to this day, I still don't eat grains. I'm never going to eat grains again. And I think that diet in particular was a huge game changer. I was able to feel better, right? So then, when you feel better, you're not suicidal, right? And it just makes you happier to feel better. I was able to gain weight, and it just seemed like life was really just looking up with this diet, and I'm so grateful for it. And
so was this something you decided, this is what I'm going to do myself, and did the research on it, or was this something that was recommended to you?
Yeah, it was myself. Absolutely no doctor is never going to recommend me to to try a special holistic diet, but I was always just like searching online, like, what are people doing out there? How can I feel better? And somehow I stumbled across the SCD diet. But what was so imperative to start this diet was that I was at home, not traveling, and cooking my meals myself, and having that extra space, to journal about your food every single day. It's grueling to write down, all right, everything that I put in my body. And I did that for 2 years, and it was even tough on my family because, I'd have to bring my food to go visit them, or they couldn't feed me, or they could only feed me like, bananas if they could. It was definitely extremely hard, but I'll never eat grains again. Yeah. After being gluten-free for 10 years, gluten-free didn't help me. Like, I still had inflammation. I still felt bad. And being on the SCD diet extremely decreased my inflammation.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I'll come back to something you said a moment ago about sort of emotional and mental well-being from surgery. Because I don't think I was chatting to somebody about this a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying, well, this type of thing's not talked about often enough, and I don't think it is. I think a lot of the surgeries that are done are very much about physical well-being. So, right, what can we put in? What can we take out? What can we change? What can we do to fix this person physically? And actually, the emotional side of it, the mental side of, especially 16 surgeries. I haven't had quite as many. I'm in double figures, but not quite as many. But the emotional side of that, the mental side of that, really, really can take its toll if not managed, not sort of talked about, and things like that. So, did you find, obviously, when you had those surgeries, that emotionally that was really, really difficult?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Even just having the thought of like, I'm so sick right now, I need to go to the ER is like, I need help, but I can't go there because I'm so afraid of what's going to happen. And it's not like when you're in the hospital and you're going through all this stuff that they have, emotional support people really like coming in to be with you. And just to go back to that story where I had to have my bandages changed, it would have been nice if there was some kind of position or some kind of role for somebody that was in the hospital, be there and be like, you know what, Amy's really having a lot of anxiety about this right now. Can you please come back? Let's let her settle down and get this controlled, this emotion controlled, rather than just pushing forward and you're going to do what you need to do. And that was such a big learning for me, because now, well, I'm not going back to the hospital now, but in my recent past, I have learned that if I'm having a hard time emotionally and somebody's coming in, like, we're going to come in and get your blood, I'm able to say no, and I'm able to stand up for myself and say, no, now is not a good time for me. And, they will still press you and be like, no, you've got to do it right now. And the fact is that, no, I don't have to have my blood drawn or whatever you're doing right now. I can have that autonomy to be able to stand up for myself.
Yeah, definitely. If we move on sort of from sort of pandemic in 2020 to sort of 2021, you discovered something called breath work that I was doing a little bit of research. Obviously, you'll know a lot more about this than my sort of half an hour research that I did. Do you just want to sort of give a brief overview of what breath work is and how it helped you?
Definitely. First, I would just say I am not a breathwork facilitator. I am just a breathwork enjoyer. But breathwork is really the practice of connecting to your breath. It's kind of similar to a meditation, but you're always just connecting to the in-breath, to the out-breath. And there are different variations of breathwork. You can make sure that you're breathing in really quickly or really slowly, but it's not having extra thoughts. It's just you are focused on the in-breath and the out-breath. And there's certain, musics and playlists or drums that you can listen to while you're having this conscious focus on your breath. And the thing is that the breath is a vehicle. It's going to take you somewhere, once you get over that hump of, oh, this is really hard to focus on, but if you just do the work and focus on the breath, then you go somewhere. And that somewhere is really like your subconscious. And you're able, I think what do they call it? Your parasympathetic nervous system, I believe is what it's called, where you find like you're really relaxed and you're not so much in your body, but you're just kind of like above it. And that's where magic happens. And you can go in with an intention, or you can just, I always think it's better to just whatever's for my highest and greatest good. But yeah, I went on a retreat in Sedona in 2021, and I didn't have a clue what breathwork was. I was just like, yeah, let's do it. And, I lay down with my little blindfold, and they're playing this like loud tribal music. And I had a practitioner who was right next to me, and she kind of just helped to monitor like my stomach to make sure I was like breathing correctly from my diaphragm and just keeping me focused on my breath. And I was able to forgive myself from having those suicidal thoughts, and to know that it's okay that I had those thoughts, and just to be thankful that I didn't give up my life. And I mean, everybody can have any kind of experience. I mean, people that go into breathwork sometimes they have a past life experience. Sometimes they go to the future. Sometimes they just learn about their now that they need to know about. But I mean, it was revolutionary. I mean, just like the SCD diet, it was revolutionary for me to learn about breathwork.
Most definitely. And when I was coming across the research, obviously there's places in the US where you are. There are also there's Breathwork UK where I am, and they do various retreats. And there's a really good website where you can find out lots of information. So if you are interested in breathwork, there are UK the UK bases as well as US. It's not just a US thing.
Universal thing, right? Because I mean, breath is universal, I would say. And you can do breathwork at home. You can learn about it at home. You don't have to, pay to go and do it in a class, but it's definitely an experience to have to be in a class with other people laying on their little mats, and having an instructor being like, keep breathing. And, people around you are like crying or screaming. And I mean, there's a lot that gets transmuted and that comes up for people. And, I mean, it's a whole experience in itself just to do breathwork in a group. I would recommend that if anyone wants to experience that. But the thing is that we're all there. We're all trying to heal something, right? We all know we've got shit that's coming up that needs attention.
Most definitely. So yeah, if you are interested, by all means, do the research and seek it out. If we move to sort of midway into 2022, so the 3 surgeries are sort of scheduled, and then sort of May time your problems tended to worsen. How did that manifest itself?
I would say that in 2022, I just started having increased bowel movements, increased urgency, rectal pain, not so much stomach pain. Maybe I had a little bit of blood, but like the rectal pain that I would have was really the most significant. You're walking along and it's like, oh, like you just have to like crumble and just be in this pain. Or I would have to, if I can't even say it's a yoga position, but it would be similar to downward dog that I would have to do just to get that pressure out of my butt, or just to squat down. And in 2001, I also got sober, and that was a really big thing. I promise that it's no coincidence that within the 1 year of me getting sober, I also committed to getting my J-pouch fixed and really addressing these health issues. I was a completely different person than I was back in 2008 and 2009 and 10. And so I was really sick, and I had to get the ostomy bag again. I had to wait a month to get it. And it was just like this excruciating 1 month of just feeling terrible, but just like, I can't wait to get the bag again. And so, I mean, these ostomy bags, they're amazing. They save your life when you need them to. And I'm so grateful that I got it. And so that was, I guess, April 22. yeah, I lost 30 pounds during that time. It was just a really hard time. My brother had died, and then I would say that the recovery of that surgery, they gave me oxycodone. I'd never been given oxycodone before, and that's just not a good drug. And it made recovery even more challenging. And what's interesting is that oxycodone actually increases your pain, and it's like such a catch-22 when really you are trying to get out of pain, but you can't because it's increasing your pain. And so, anyways, once I decreased and stopped the oxycodone on that, my recovery just skyrocketed. And then I was able to recover. And I mean, I interviewed, I don't know, maybe 8 different doctors looking for the right J-pouch doctor. Just because the emergency ostomy bag that I had gotten, it was just from a local doctor in Atlanta. I was just like, I need somebody, like it's just an ostomy surgery. It's really relatively simple. And so I really, interviewed people in New York. I interviewed people in North Carolina, in Ohio, all the main medical campuses here in the U.S. And I found my doctor, and she did a scope and MRI, and we learned that the J-pouch was like 180 degrees turned and twisted, and that the tissue just really wasn't looking well, and that the rectal cuff was double the length of what it should be. And that's really what was causing all of these complications that I had been having. And I mean, just getting that news that somebody knew, somebody had an answer, like a true answer, was such a blessing. And but to get the J-pouch surgery, the only way that she would do it was if I started the drug Stelara. And I really didn't want to start Stelara, but I came to terms with it within myself. And I was so desperate to get out of my current situation that I would do anything. And I had always opted out as long as I could of the biologics because I just didn't want to be on drugs. And sure, maybe that's why I had more surgeries, because I chose surgery over drugs. But what do you do? And so I just worked out a lot, ate really good, kept doing my healing work to prepare for my J-pouch surgery. And I went into that surgery just like so on cloud 9. I was so healthy. I was really just a clear channel emotionally. And I was like 135 pounds. Like I was really fit, and I was in a good place. I was in a loving relationship that helped. And it felt like I was really just in the flow, honestly, with the universe, and that everything was really going my way. I was understanding how to listen to myself more, how to pick the right doctor, and how just small things is like if I'm interviewing somebody for being my doctor, why am I so angry? Like, why am I angry at their staff for some reason? I've never really met them. But listening to that inner voice of like, why am I angry? Or why did they lose my appointment for the 3rd time? Maybe that's not the doctor for me if they keep losing my appointment. And so yeah, I had the J-pouch surgery in June of last year, 2023. It went phenomenal. It was a 10-hour surgery, so very, very long. And they took out the old J-pouch. At the time, my doctor was like, we don't know what's going to happen, if you're going to keep the J-pouch or you're going to get a new one, or we're going to revise it. But once she got in there, and I've even seen the photos of it, like that thing looked as terrible as I felt. And it wasn't a healthy looking fake organ. But in that surgery, I mean, she cleaned up so much scar tissue that had like just been in my lower pelvis, especially on my fallopian tubes. And I had some fistulas that she fixed. She shortened the rectal cuff and, created this beautiful little J-pouch. And then, I was left with a new stoma at that time. And that was like one of the best stomas I've had. And it was just like, it was like a chimney. If anybody that has a stoma knows, I mean, it was like just upright, it was strong. And so, and she gave me plastic surgery on my stomach. And that was another huge blessing, because after having that wound infection from when I was younger, it it really rocked my stomach up.
Fantastic. That's one of the best quotes I've ever heard. One of the best stomas I've ever had. That's a fantastic quote. I love that.
Yeah. That stoma, that second stoma had so much high output. It was a whole different animal when you were having to empty your bag, 10 to 15 times a day. Like, that's a lot. And but it was still the best one for sure, because it wasn't, what do they call it? Prolapse, when it goes into your skin. And I didn't have any skin issues. So yeah.
Fantastic. And also another point I want to touch on before we go into the third surgery, fitness and health. I've talked to quite a few people about fitness and health. Obviously, it's my sort of bag, my speciality, being in sport for the last sort of decade and a half. Obviously, I've seen the benefits with lots of people, both with chronic conditions and without. And I think we all sort of know in the back of our minds that, yes, fitness and health is important, and eating well and exercising. But one thing that I've really seen interviewing people with chronic conditions is just how much fitness, gym work, running, whatever it might be, has really, really helped. Are you more gym work, running? Do you do a mixture of the two? How does it work for you?
Right now, I'm definitely more focused on weight training, because that's how you gain the muscle to gain the weight. But in my heart, I'm a runner. I want to run more, and it's on my to-do list really to start integrating more running, because I know my body loves it and it feels good doing it. And I love working out. I wouldn't have this body to be who I am now, to have healed through all these surgeries, without working out.
Definitely. One thing that I have found has helped my running is to get a dog. It's very much helped.
Yeah, I have a dog, but she's kind of slow. She's a little older. We used to run when she was young, but now I can't take her. She's too slow.
Fantastic. If we move on then to surgery 3, which is the part that we actually have in common, the stoma reversal. You are the first person I've ever met with a stoma reversal. So talk us through that third surgery.
Yeah, so I had my stoma reversal on the ostomy takedown just 2 months ago, back in March. And I had been preparing for that surgery, with working out, eating right, emotional work, just to make sure I was ready for surgery. And I'm so thrilled at how I recovered from that surgery, and just having it, and that it was successful. And it ended up being my 18th surgery, and it will be my last surgery. And it was like just a super simple procedure. They kind of just take your intestines and just kind of, just like connect them back or stitch them back together and tuck it back in your abdomen wall. And they left me with like a large opening on my stomach. I thought I was going to be like, closed up completely. But I guess because it's considered a dirty wound area because of the intestines, they have to leave it open so it can close and rise. And it was the easiest surgery recovery I have ever had. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, I wish they were all like that. I wish everybody's surgery recovery was this easy. And I was in the hospital for about 4 or 5 days, and they actually wanted to send me home after like 2 days. But I was like, no, please, I'd like to can you just keep an eye on me a little longer? And I had my first bowel movement in the hospital, and that was exciting. And I was in the hospital for 4 or 5 days, and I was home for a week, and my family stayed with me, and they helped me for 1 week. And then after that, I was like, all right, I'm ready to take this recovery on my own and make my own food. And all I had to do was just like clean my bandage area for like once a day, which was really no big deal. But the key of my recovery was really walking. And they always say, in the hospital, you got to get up and walk, and nobody ever wants to get up and walk. But that is the key to recovering, is that the more you walk, the faster you're going to heal. And I just kept pushing myself through these walks. I would walk like, I don't know, 0.2, but then, by the end of the week, I was walking, 1.5 miles and, or 2 miles, and it just felt so good to get to that place of knowing that I'm in control of it right now. Like I'm the one that's really guiding this ship of recovery. And my doctor even said that I've recovered quicker than most of her patients she's ever seen, especially with the visuals of my wound. And I was written out of work for 6 weeks, but I went back early. I went back at like 4 weeks because I was feeling so great, and just kind of wanted to get the show on the road. I was done, and the feeling of being done with all of these surgeries and all of these endeavors is something it's pretty much impossible to put into words, but it's a really nice place to be.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. And just very lastly, you've had obviously all these surgeries, all of these medical procedures. What does the future look like for you? You said there's no more surgeries planned, and fingers crossed, no more surgeries. What do you see for you in the future?
Oh, thanks for asking. I love that question. So honestly, in the future, I see a lot of travel happening. And one of the things I really want to do is go to the 7 chakras of the world. That's going to be like in the U.S., Mount Shasta, Lake Titicaca in Peru, the Stonehenge, Egypt, etc. There's Uluru in Australia. And I have been so confined to being home and to being near a bathroom or near a doctor's office that, and also like I literally had to, or because of fear that I was afraid to go out and do that type of traveling. And now it's like, now I just really feel like I've been like reborn, honestly, and that I have this new lease on life that's just been constantly like slowly building in the background. And so that's what I want to do. I want to take my J pouch and have her go traveling with me around the world, and just really bringing my light to different parts of the world.
That's fantastic. And very, very good luck with that. Just lastly as well, you have an Instagram, you have a YouTube channel. Where can people find you to find more on your story?
Sure thing. I share my story on Instagram, and the name of it is called God's Best J Pouch. And I have a video on there if you want to just see me talking about my story and some photos and footage. In the profile on my Instagram, you can see that link there. But also on YouTube, it's just one video, the same video that's linked through my Instagram, is I See the Universe 1111. And yeah, okay, that's it. And you're welcome to see it. I created a GoFundMe for these most recent 3 surgeries, and that's the video that we use to help just share what people would be donating towards. And yeah, it's a phenomenal video, and I'd encourage anybody that's just curious about hearing somebody's story and seeing a visual of it to check it out.
Definitely, I can concur. It's a fascinating video, absolutely fascinating video. Well, just from me, thank you ever so much, Aidan, for sharing your story, and I wish you the best of luck with your traveling and everything you're doing in the future.
Thanks so much. And I just want to say, I guess, to the listeners is that, I just wish healing for every single person that can hear this, and to love and acceptance, and that you are on the right path, and that everything does happen for a reason.
It's a brilliant message to finish. Thank you very much.